Okay guys, today we're going to go over some basic geometric terms and definitions to start out our first geometry unit. So one of the first terms is point. Now I know you guys have heard about point before, but we're going to talk about it in more of a geometric sense and get a formal definition. Okay, so a point is a specific location . It has no dimension . And is represented by a dot. Okay, so for example, a point, like when you graph a point. Okay, now a lot of times in geometry we label our points with letters, and most of the time points are labeled with uppercase letters, so like a regular capital letters. So for example, this is point B. Okay, we want to make sure that we're labeling all points in uppercase letters. Now the notation of how we label like points, lines, rays, planes, segments, all those things is really important. So make sure you write this stuff down. All right, so next is a line. Okay, the formal definition of a line is it is a connected straight path . Okay, a line, it has no thickness . And it continues forever in both directions. Okay, this forever part, this is like super duper important. Okay, because if it's a line, to show that it's actually a line, it's going to have arrows on both ends of the line to show that it's continuing forever and ever in both directions. Now, one way we can name a line is we can name a line by two of the points it passes between. So if those 2 points are labeled, we can call this line, for example, line AB. Okay. Another way we could call this line is we could also call it line BA, so it doesn't matter the order that we put the letters in. Okay. Now, an additional way we can write the name of this line is we can write it using like a shorthand notation, where we draw a little line symbol, and then we write the 2 points it's passing between. So we draw a line symbol and then the 2 points, AB. And so also you can do this reversing the order of the letters. So you could do also line BA. Now there's one last way to name a line. So if you have a diagram and next to the line you see like a lowercase cursive letter, for example, like say it had lowercase cursive L next to that line, that means we can also call the line by its lowercase cursive letters, so we could also call it line L. Okay? So all of these are different ways to name this same line. Okay, so the next term we're going to talk about is plane. Okay, so here's what a plane is. It is a flat surface, kind of like the top of your desk. Okay, it has no thickness. And extends forever in all directions. Okay. So If you think about like if the top of your desk were to continue spreading out in all directions forever and ever, that would be like a plane. Okay. Now, usually though, when you see planes drawn in geometry, they look like they end, because usually they draw them kind of like this. Because really it's hard to draw something that continues forever and ever, but we can just assume that this plane is expanding in all directions forever and ever. Okay. Now, sometimes when you see a plane, you'll see some labeling inside of it. So you may see an uppercase letter, okay, or you may see some points with capital letters next to them. Okay, all of those letters can help us name a plane. So in order to name a plane, there's two different ways you can name it. You can either name it by its cursive letter, its cursive uppercase letter. So we could call this plane M. Okay, or I can name it by three of its letters, so I can call it plane X, Y, Z by its points. Okay, so I can either name it by its uppercase cursive letter or by 3 points contained in the plane. Now, it doesn't matter what order I put these in. Okay, I could also call it plane ZYX. I could also call it plane XZY. Okay, so remember that there's lots of different ways to order these letters, okay, and it doesn't matter what we order them. Now, you're either going to name it by its points or name it by its uppercase capital letter, but you're not going to mix the capital cursive letter like this one. You're not going to mix this with the other ones, okay? So it's either this or it's some combination of the points, okay? But we're not mixing this with these. Okay? All right. So the next thing, line segment, okay? So a line segment is similar to a line, except it's not going on forever and ever because it's only a portion of a line, okay? So a line segment is a portion of a line with two endpoints. Okay, so there's a line, but it's not really a line because there's not arrows on the end. There's endpoints on the end. Okay, I can name them with some letters. So that's why it's called a line segment, because the line actually ends. Okay, now there's a couple different ways you can name this. You can call it segment, CD, and remember the order of the letters doesn't matter, so you can also call it segment DC. Or if you want to use like a shorthand notation, you can use like a symbol, so segment CD, or also you could do segment DC. All of these are names for this line, just different ways to write them. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about array. Okay, so array is similar to a line, but it's a portion of a line that starts at an endpoint and continues forever in one direction. Okay, so if you think about like a ray, like from the sun, right? The sun is like the starting point, and then the ray like continues from the sun, but it continues in one direction. So maybe like it's continuing towards Earth, right, from the sun. So when we're talking about ray, this is what they will end up looking like. One endpoint. It can still pass through another point, but it's continuing past that point and in that direction forever and ever. So there's an arrow on one end of it, okay? Now you may have two of the points labeled that it's passing through, and so that's how we name it. We would call this ray PQ, okay, or another way to name it would be ray PQ with a symbolic notation like that. Alright, so last thing we're going to talk about today are the terms collinear and coplanar. So if you look at the word collinear, you see the word line inside the word linear, right? But you also see co, and co means like together. Like for example, if you think of your co-workers, those are people you work with, you work together with them. So collinear means together on the same line. Okay, so when we're talking about collinear, this is describing points on the same line. Okay, so for example, here you have points A, B, and C. A, B, and C are collinear. They're all on the same line. Now, any 2 points can be collinear with each other, okay, but 3 points, you could possibly have 3 points that are not collinear, right? Like if I took point B and I moved it over here, it's no longer collinear with A and C, right? If I move point B over here, then it could be collinear with A, it could be collinear with C, but it is not collinear with both at the same time. Does that make sense? So any 2 points can be collinear to each other, but it has to kind of be special in a special placement in order for 3 points to be collinear. Okay, now we also have this other term called coplanar. And so what that is, you have the word co and you have the word plane inside planar. So what that means is it's describing points in the same plane that lie on the same plane. Okay, so let's say I had a plane. Here's my plane. Let's call this plane M. And I have points P, Q, and R. All of those points are lying on that same plane, so we would say that they're coplanar. Okay. Alright, so that's what we're going to fill in just for our definitions today. We're going to save these other definitions for when we actually get to those topics. Okay, but we're going to flip over to the back of your sheet right now, and we're going to go over some example problems that are similar to like what you guys would do on your homework. Alright, so let's take a look at the first set of problems. It says, refer to the figure, so we're going to use this figure for numbers 1 through 3, and it says name a line that is not contained in plane N. So if you look at the plane's right here. I don't know if it helps you guys if I like kind of shade it a little bit, but this is the plane right here. So I see that this line here and this line here are lying on the plane, but this line is cutting through it. So this line here would not be contained in that plane. So we could name that line several ways because it has several different points. We could call it line AB, we could call it line AE, or we could call it line BE. So it doesn't matter what we call it. We could write the word line, or we could do the symbol. I'll do two examples, so we could call it line AB, or we could also call it, using its symbol, line, I don't know, and I'll pick two different points, AE. A couple different ways to name that line, but we're describing the same line there. The important thing on these examples is that you're using the notation correctly for the type of term that you're working with. Alright, so next it says name a plane that contains point B. So we want to name the plane that is containing this point B. So that would be this plane right here. I see it has an uppercase cursive letter, so I could call this plane N. Another way to name this plane would be by three of its points that are contained in the plane. So I could also call it plane, I don't know, B, C, D. Those are 3 points contained in that plane. Alright, now last it's asking me to name 3 collinear points. So remember what collinear means. Collinear means contained in the same line. So if I chose A, B, C, those are not all on the same line. A and B are on the same line, B and C are on the same line, but A, B, C are not collinear. So I would want to pick 3 points on the same line. So I would say they would be points A, B, and E. Okay, so in our next figure, we now have like a 3-dimensional figure with some flat surfaces. So in addition to lines, we've got some planes here. So we just want to answer the questions about this figure. So if I look at the first question, it's asking how many planes are shown in the figure. So I see there's one up top here, there's one on the bottom here, so that's 2. I have one on the back and then one on the front here, so that's 2 more. And then I have like 2 side walls, okay? So that would be 2 more. So I would say there's a total of 6 planes in this figure, okay? Alright, so the next question asks, are points B, E, G, and H coplanar? So I want to identify where those are. B is right here, E is right here, G is over here, and H is over here. So in order for those 4 points to be coplanar, they all have to be in the same plane. So I see like these 3 right here are coplanar. But in order for G to be coplanar with these, it would need to be over here, so it would be in the same plane as those. So I'm going to say no, they are not. Only 3 out of 4 are coplanar. So not all of them are, only some of them are. Okay. Alright, so next it says name a point coplanar with D, C, and E. So I'm going to get a different color here to highlight those points. But I see D is way back here in the corner, C is over here, and E is over here. So if I'm looking at those points, all of those points are basically, if you think of this shape like being a room, they're all part of the floor, okay? So I need to pick another point that's part of the floor. So I see this point J here, or this point F here would work. That's looking like the only options that I have. So I'm going to say either F or J would work. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look at this last section here. It says draw and label a figure for each relationship. Okay, so the first one says planes M and N intersect in line HJ. So I have 2 planes here that are intersecting. So I want to draw 2 planes that intersect. So I'm going to draw my first plane. This one could be plane M. label it. And it's going to intersect with plane N. So I'm going to draw another plane coming through here and intersecting and I can draw these dash lines to show it's kind of behind there. Okay. And then I'll draw this solid line showing that's kind of in front there. Alright, so this could be plane N. Now, it said that they intersect in line HJ, so I want to actually show like where they intersect. So if you think about where they intersect, they're actually intersecting right here. There's a line where they're touching each other. Right there. So imagine if you like took a piece of paper and like shoved another piece of paper through the middle of it. That's what we have. We have a piece of paper going this way, a piece of paper going that way, and we're shoving this one down through like a slit we would cut in that paper. Now, I'm going to call this line here HJ. So that can be point H, and that can be point J. And so there are my two planes intersecting in line HJ. Alright, let's take a look at number 8. Line R is in plane N. Line N is in plane M. And lines R and S intersect at point J. Okay, so I have a line in this plane and a line in this plane. And my two lines are intersecting at a point. Okay, so let's draw two planes. First of all, if the lines are going to intersect, then the planes are probably intersecting, so I want to draw two intersecting planes. So this could be plane N. I'm going to draw another plane intersecting with it. The intersection. Okay, this plane can be plane, let's call this one, what was the other one, plane M. Okay, now it says plane N contains a line, R, and plane M contains a line, S, and they intersect at point J. So all I need to do is draw some lines within these planes. So let's say I draw a line in here. That line can be line R. And then I'll draw a line in this plane. This plane, the line was line S. And they're intersecting in a point, and the point is J. So here's point J. Okay, last, it says line T contains point H, and line T does not lie in plane M or plane N. Okay, so I have these two planes, and this line doesn't lie in either one of those planes. Okay, so let's draw our two planes. this can be plane M. This could be plane N. And I have some line that's not in either of them. Okay? So the line can't go vertical and it can't go horizontal this way, so maybe I'll make the line kind of, I don't know, like somewhere over here, where the line is like somewhere in space, not ever going to intersect either of those planes. Now it says line T contains point H, so we want to have it have a point H, and this is line T, so we're going to put a little cursive T there. So your drawing could look something like that. Okay. Now, if you're having a hard time drawing, don't stress out too much. It takes practice, but you guys will get the hang of it eventually, okay? So that's our lesson for today, and if you're done with this, you can put this page into your notebook. Okay, it's going to go on the next open page in your notebook, so on page 6, and then you can start on tonight's homework.